Recent fundraising numbers show Senator Bernie Sanders crushing, with online donations exceeding the pace of Obama's back in 2008. Now, this is interesting. The Sanders campaign had raised, in recent reports, more than $24 million for his campaign for the Democratic presidential nomination in the last 3 months. A significant number of that came from online donations. Well, how many? Well, so far, the campaign boasts over 1 million. 1 million. Wow. Now, Sanders' advisors announced the fundraising in a tally on Wednesday night, added that Senator Sanders had more than $25 million cash on hand so that he can spend. Wow. Now, that's not very much compared to his opponent, Democrat Hillary Clinton, who is, of course, expected to announce her fundraising numbers shortly. Okay. Now, as of June 30th, the last deadline, Clinton had about $28.9 million in cash on hand compared to the $12 million that Senator Bernie Sanders had. Now, and it's because, as the New York Times wants to explain, Mrs. Clinton has been raising money far more aggressively than Mr. Sanders, holding 10 times as many events with donors, many of whom contribute the $2,700 maximum to her primary campaign account. Now, this is very important. Corporate media and our political system, they only look at how much money you can raise when it comes to becoming the nominee or the president. So this is what they're going to... Ultimately, they're going to focus on the money. How much money did you raise? Only then are you considered relevant. So they also focus on how aggressive the candidates are at begging for money from some of these large corporations, these donors, these rich people. That's what they focus on. And so Mrs. Clinton, Hillary Clinton, is very, very good at begging for money from these large corporations. Geo Group, Wall Street, the big banks. Very, very good at begging for money for those. In fact, remember, she used to speak and get paid for speaking to Goldman Sachs and telling them how misunderstood that they really are. You're so misunderstood. You're so misunderstood. But don't worry, I'm here for you. Kind of. As long as you give me money. Then I'll be here for you all day. Anyway. Now, the question is, now that Sanders has raised some of this money, well, what's he doing with it? Well, this is back to the article. The latest estimates suggest that Mr. Sanders has spent $15 million on his campaign so far. A large amount, considering he has yet to make traditionally expensive expenditures on political commercials or polling. Advisors said that most of his spending went to the online fundraising operation and to hiring staff. Mr. Sanders has 49 paid workers in Iowa, 43 in New Hampshire, 21 in his campaign headquarters in Burlington, Vermont, and 27 elsewhere. He also has 15 offices in Iowa and 9 in New Hampshire. So he's got a lot of staff, right? He's got a lot of offices in different places. He's basically not wasting money on TV ads. He's actually creating a more grassroots campaign on the ground, and that's really where it matters. It really matters when to have offices in different places so that you have staff and people to canvass these different areas. All right. Now, also, according to the campaign, they paid for direct mail program, right? Now, that's expensive, but they do that because it's effective. It actually reaches potential donors and supporters, and it's also used to rent arenas and other large venues in major cities for Mr. Sanders to do his campaign rallies at. Once again, that makes sense. He's really targeting people on the ground, whereas Hillary Clinton, well, the article gets into that as well. Now, first, Mr. Sanders' advisor said that they did not have the data yet on the proportion of the donations that were $200 or less, a measure of grassroots support and of his popularity among Americans who are not wealthy. I think that's pretty obvious. Now, last time, the last quarter for donations of $200 or less accounted for some 76% of the money he raised in the second quarter. That is a very large majority. When you look at anybody else running in the race, when it comes to small-time donations of $200 or less, he is the only one that has over 50%. Not even Hillary Clinton does that. Now, here's some comparisons, right? I mentioned earlier at the top of the segment the comparison to Obama's fundraising. Now, this is interesting. The comparison between Obama's campaign and Senator Sanders' campaign is this. The number of online donations collected since May came at a faster pace than the internet fundraising operation of Obama's 2008 campaign. Remember, that shattered all the records. And now, here comes Bernie Sanders. Here he comes. Now, Mr. Obama did not pass the mark of 1 million contributions until the Democratic primaries were underway in the winter of 2008. According to Obama fundraising solicitations at the time, Mr. Sanders has also amassed 65,000 contributors, well more than Mr. Obama had at the comparable point in the campaign cycle. Now, there's two other points of comparison that they point out to Mr. Sanders' haul of more than $24 million for the third quarter of 2015. Obama raised $20.2 million for the third quarter of 2007, and Hillary Clinton raised about $23.5 million in that same period. And this is according to data from the Campaign Finance Institute. Now, the question is it enough? Is it enough? Okay, since we know our media tends to look at how much money is raised by a campaign to determine its validity, will this change the media narrative to be even slightly less dismissive? Even just a little, if they're even a little less dismissive of Bernie Sanders, will that happen? Will that happen? Now, I give you a couple of examples, a couple of data points to kind of chew on when you come up with that answer. Look at Jeb Bush. Now, Jeb Bush is a fundraising juggernaut, crushing Hillary Clinton, crushing everybody in the field. He's raised the most money out of any candidate so far. He's raised $120 million total for his campaign. Now, most of that comes from super PACs. Now, he's got all this money. And right now, I don't think he's really unleashed a lot of it, right? And currently, he sits at about 7% in the polls. Now, Scott Walker raised $26 million. 20 of it from super PACs, right? That's a lot more than Bernie Sanders, right? That's a lot. That's a lot of money. Now, look at where he's at. Where's Scott Walker? Where'd he go? Oh, that's right. He dropped out. He disappeared. And now everybody's fighting for the rest of his money. So there you go. They're actually fighting for that $20 million of super PAC money. What about Rick Perry? Rick Perry, he raised $15 million in his campaign, slightly less than Bernie Sanders, right? Now, where is he? Well, he's back at his poorly named ranch. That's where he's at. He's not doing well at all. He's gone. My point being that at some point, these guys were taken more seriously by the media than Bernie Sanders. Even though Bernie, when it comes to polling, crushes each and every one of them. And that's without raising as much money. And even more if you actually don't count super PACs in the mix. Which, of course, Bernie Sanders, he doesn't have a super PAC. He doesn't accept PAC money at all. No super PAC money. All of that is from smaller donations. So my question is, will he start to be taken seriously by the media? My bet is no. However, I think, this is my personal opinion, that Sanders, he doesn't really need the corporate media. He doesn't. Why? Well, it's because he has the people. Bernie Sanders doesn't need the media because he's got the people behind him. And more flock to his campaign every day. He's got the people. And the people are no doubt feeling the burn.